The clang of weights echoed. The air hung thick with sweat and the sharp tang of antiseptic. It was late afternoon. Most of the fighters had left. Only a few younger students remained. They were watching, wide-eyed. They watched as Rattler Briggs stood in the middle of the gym. Briggs was a mountain of a man. His muscles rippled under his tight black shirt. He had a reputation, not just for winning, but for being tough. Too tough, some said. He liked to push people, hard. Now, Briggs's eyes were fixed on one person, Earl. Earl was the janitor. He was a quiet man, close to 60. His skin was the color of rich earth. His hair was mostly gray. Earl was pushing his mop bucket. The wheels squeaked softly on the polished floor. Earl wore faded blue overalls. He had a peaceful look on his face. He always did. He moved slowly, carefully, cleaning up the day's grime. He was almost invisible most of the time, just a part of the background. But not today. Today, Briggs was making sure everyone saw Earl. "Get in the ring, old man!" Briggs's voice cut through the quiet. It was sharp, like a whip cracking. Earl stopped pushing his mop bucket. The squeaking stopped. His hands, gnarled from years of work, tightened on the mop handle. He had heard Briggs. Everyone had. A knot formed in Earl's stomach. He just wanted to finish his work. He wanted to go home to his quiet apartment. He wanted to read his book. This was not part of his plan. This was not part of his life. "I'm just here to clean, Mr. Briggs," Earl said. His voice was soft. It held a deep calm. It was a voice that had seen much, a voice that had learned patience. He looked at Briggs. He looked directly into the trainer's cruel eyes. Earl's gaze held no fear, only a tired dignity. Briggs laughed. It was a harsh sound. It echoed off the high ceiling. "Clean? You think you're too good for a little fun, old-timer? Or just scared?" he sneered. He took a step closer to Earl. Briggs wore a cocky grin. His eyes gleamed with a mean amusement. He loved to show off. He loved to make others feel small, especially those he thought were below him. And in his world, a janitor was always below him. The young students shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. They didn't want to watch. Others snickered. They were egged on by Briggs's loud, harsh laughter. They knew Briggs's games. He often picked on someone weaker, someone who couldn't fight back. Today, it was Earl. Earl felt a flush rise to his cheeks. Not from anger, not yet. It was from a deeper shame. A memory of old wounds. He had promised himself. He promised he would never be in such a place again, never let his guard down, not after everything. He had buried that life. He had built a new one. A quiet one, a peaceful one, for himself, for his family's memory. This gym, this challenge, it threatened to dig up things he wanted to keep hidden, deep down. Briggs wasn't asking. He never really asked. He pointed a thick finger at the ring ropes. They looked like giant white snakes. "Come on, Earl. Just a little sparring. For the boys. Show them what happens when you're not strong. Or, maybe," Briggs's voice dropped, full of fake kindness, "maybe you'll surprise us all." "Huh?" He winked at his students. They chuckled again. Earl slowly shook his head. "I am not a fighter, Mr. Briggs." He tried to keep his voice steady. He tried to stay calm. He knew Briggs fed on fear. He fed on weakness. Earl would not give him that satisfaction. But Briggs was relentless. He saw Earl's quiet refusal as a challenge, a disrespect. "Not a fighter?" Briggs scoffed. He took another step. He was right in front of Earl now. He smelled of strong cologne and old sweat. "Every man is a fighter, Earl, or a coward. Which one are you?" Briggs pushed his chest out. He towered over Earl. The janitor felt small, like a shadow, Briggs's shadow. Earl looked down at his mop. He wished he could just disappear into the floor, his peaceful life, his simple work. It was all being ripped away for a few minutes of cheap entertainment, for Briggs's ego. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. He remembered his wife's face, her gentle smile, her words, "Stay strong, Earl, but stay wise." He opened his eyes. He saw the cold, hard reality of the gym. Briggs grabbed Earl's arm then. His grip was surprisingly gentle at first. Then it tightened. It was like a steel vice. "No choice, old-timer. The show must go on." Briggs chuckled. He yanked Earl towards the boxing ring. The mop bucket clattered to the floor. Water sloshed out. It spread across the polished concrete, like a dark, growing stain. Earl stumbled. His worn shoes slipped a little. He resisted for a second. His muscles, though old, still had a stubborn strength. But Briggs was too powerful, too determined. Briggs pulled him hard. He dragged Earl towards the ropes. Earl felt the eyes of the young students on him. He felt their judgment. He felt their pity. It was a heavy weight. He was forced through the ropes. He landed awkwardly on the canvas. The canvas felt alien beneath his worn shoes. It was bouncy, unfamiliar. He stood there, a janitor in his faded blue overalls. He stood against a world champion trainer. Briggs clapped his hands together. A wide, predatory smile stretched across his face. Briggs walked into the ring after Earl. He moved with a boxer's grace, a dancer's ease. "All right, boys, let's see some action." Briggs yelled. He flexed his biceps. They bulged under his shirt. Earl looked around. The ropes enclosed him. The lights glared down. The small audience stared. He was trapped. His quiet life had just been violently interrupted. He felt a deep sigh escape his chest. He stood there, an old man forced into a battle he did not want. But as Earl looked around, his eyes, usually so peaceful, held a flicker of something ancient, something forgotten, something Briggs, in his arrogance, completely missed. Deep, quiet strength that had been buried for a long, long time. The game had just begun, and Briggs, in his cruel amusement, had no idea who he was truly playing with. He had no idea what he had just awoken. Briggs moved with purpose. He paced in his corner of the ring. He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet. He was like a predator playing with its food. He grinned at Earl. A cold, hard grin. "All right, Earl. Just a few rounds. Nothing serious, unless you want it to be." His words were heavy with threat. They hung in the air like smoke. Earl stood still. He was in the center of the ring. He looked like a statue, a worn, tired statue. His hands hung loosely by his sides. He watched Briggs. He watched the way Briggs's muscles moved, the way his eyes shone with cruel amusement. Earl's face was unreadable. It was a mask built from years of holding things in, years of choosing peace over conflict, years of burying a past he never wanted to revisit. "Gloves, Briggs?" one of the younger students called out. He was excited. He was part of Briggs's fan club. Briggs waved a dismissive hand. "Nah, it's just Earl here. He doesn't need gloves. I don't need gloves. It's just a little lesson." He flexed his fists. His knuckles looked like hard stones. Just a friendly spar, a quick demonstration. Earl heard the words. He felt the weight of them. A lesson. A demonstration. He was a prop. A tool for Briggs's ego. The old anger, the one he had worked so hard to put away, began to stir. It was a deep, slow burn, like embers catching fire after a long sleep. He thought of his wife again. Betty. She always told him, "Earl, you have a power in you, but use it only for good, or for defense, never for pride." Her words echoed in his mind. He looked down at his own hands. They were not smooth, they were not pretty, but they were strong. They had built things. They had cleaned things. And once, a long time ago, they had done other things, things he no longer wanted to remember. Briggs circled him. He was like a shark. He moved with a practiced ease. "So, Earl," he said. His voice was mocking. He kept circling. "Ready for your lesson? You look a little stiff. Maybe a warm-up first?" He threw a few light jabs into the air. They whistled past Earl's ears. Earl didn't flinch. He just watched. His eyes were steady. The students snickered. They expected Earl to cower, to shrink, to show fear. But Earl did not give them that. His stillness was a puzzle, a quiet defiance. It made Briggs angry. It made him want to push harder, to break that calm. "What's the matter, Grandpa? Cat got your tongue?" Briggs stopped circling. He stood directly in front of Earl. He spread his feet wide. He put his hands up, ready to strike. His eyes glittered. He was enjoying this. Too much. He moved his head from side to side. He was a professional fighter. Earl was just a janitor. Briggs was so sure of himself, so certain of his victory. Earl finally spoke. His voice was still calm, but there was a new edge to it, a low hum. "Mr. Briggs," he said, "I asked to be left alone. I did not ask for this." Briggs laughed again. A loud, booming sound. "Nobody asks for a lesson, old man. They just get it." He threw a fast, powerful jab. It was meant to miss, just barely. To scare Earl. To make him jump. To make him look foolish. But Earl didn't jump. He didn't even blink. He barely moved his head. The punch whizzed past his ear. A whisper of wind. His eyes, however, had changed. The peace was gone. In its place was something else. Something hard. Something dangerous. Briggs saw it then. A flicker. A flash in Earl's dark eyes. It was gone in an instant, but it unsettled him. Just for a second, he shook it off. It was just an old man, a janitor. What could he do? "All right," Briggs said. His voice was colder now. His patience was running thin. "Enough games. Let's get this over with." He took a deep breath. He squared his shoulders. He lowered his stance. He prepared for a quick, brutal knockout. He would end this quickly. He would show everyone. He would put Earl back in his place. He aimed for Earl's chin. A clean, quick strike. A professional move. He stepped in. His body coiled. He put all his weight behind the punch. It was a perfect right hook. Fast. Powerful. Designed to put any opponent on the canvas. But as Briggs's fist flew towards Earl, something impossible happened. Earl moved. Not like an old man. Not like a janitor. He moved like a ghost. A whisper. His body shifted. Not away. But slightly times into times the punch. His left foot moved. Just an inch. His shoulder dipped. His head swayed. It was a tiny movement. So small, it was almost unseen. And then, Earl's right hand came up. It was not a wild swing. It was not a desperate lunge. It was a precise, compact motion. A short, sharp blow. His fist was like a hammer. It traveled only a few inches, but it carried the weight of years, the weight of hidden strength, the weight of suppressed anger. His fist connected. Not with Briggs's chin, as Briggs had intended for Earl's own punch. It connected with the exact sweet spot on Briggs's jaw. The sound was not loud. It was a dull thud, like a ripe melon hitting the ground. Briggs's eyes widened. A look of utter surprise flashed across his face. Then his eyes rolled back. His body stiffened for a moment. Every muscle went rigid. He was like a tree suddenly turned to stone. Then, just as quickly, all the tension left him. He went limp. His arms dropped. His legs buckled. He fell. Not slowly, not gracefully. He crashed to the canvas, a heavy, lifeless heap. He landed with a sickening thump. He was out cold. The gym went silent. The clatter of weights, the distant hum of machines, even the breathing of the students, all of it stopped. The only sound was Briggs's heavy breathing. His chest rose and fell, but he was unconscious. His eyes were closed, his mouth slightly open. He lay perfectly still, on the hard canvas. Earl stood over him. His fist was still slightly raised. Then he slowly lowered it. He looked down at the unconscious trainer. His face was still calm. The flicker in his eyes was gone, replaced by a deep sadness, a profound weariness. He had tried to avoid this. He had really tried. He had wanted peace. But peace, sometimes, had to be fought for, even when you were old. Even when you were just a janitor. He turned. He looked at the stunned faces of the students. They stared at him. Their mouths were open. Their eyes were wide. They had just seen something they would never forget. The quiet janitor, the old man, he had just knocked out Rattler Briggs in one hit. The silence stretched. It was thick and heavy. It pressed down on everyone in the gym. The young fighters, who moments ago were cheering for Briggs, now stood frozen. Their jaws hung open. Their eyes darted from the unconscious trainer to Earl. The janitor, the old man in faded overalls. He stood perfectly still, like a weathered statue. Earl looked at their faces. He saw shock. He saw fear. He saw a dawning respect. It was a look he had seen before, many years ago, in other places, under different circumstances. He didn't want to see it again. He had hoped he never would. Slowly, carefully, Earl stepped over Briggs's limp body. He moved towards the ropes. He moved with the quiet dignity that was his usual self. His movements were fluid, easy. It was not the gait of a man nearing 60. It was the gait of someone who knew his body, who knew its power and its limits. He ducked under the ropes. He landed softly on the concrete floor. His mop bucket was still there. Spilled water shimmered under the bright gym lights. It was a small, everyday mess, a mess he was supposed to clean, his job, his simple, quiet life. It felt miles away from the last few minutes. One of the students, a tall, muscular young man named Travis, finally broke the silence. His voice was a strained whisper. "Mr. Earl, what just happened?" He couldn't take his eyes off Briggs. He couldn't believe it. No one could. Briggs was invincible, or so they thought. Earl picked up his mop. He righted the bucket. He dipped the mop in the cloudy water. He wrung it out slowly. He spoke without looking up. His voice was low, filled with a profound weariness. "What happened, son, is a man got what he asked for." He started to clean the spilled water, slowly, deliberately, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just knocked out a renowned MMA trainer. The other students exchanged glances. They were still stunned. They didn't know how to react. They looked at Briggs. He was still out cold. They looked at Earl. He was cleaning the floor. It was a scene that made no sense. It broke every rule they knew. But you knocked him out," another student stammered. He pointed at Briggs. His hand was shaking slightly. Earl paused his cleaning. He looked up. His eyes met the students'. There was a depth in them, a wisdom that seemed to stretch back through time. "I tried to avoid it," Earl said. His voice was calm, steady. "A man needs to know when to fight and when not to." Briggs never learned that lesson. He sighed. It was a deep, heartfelt sound. "Some lessons you only learn the hard way." Travis, still trying to process, took a step closer. "Mr. Earl, you're a fighter, aren't you? You must be. Nobody just does that." He looked at Earl with new eyes, eyes that saw beyond the faded overalls, beyond the mop and bucket. He saw strength. He saw skill. He saw a hidden power. Earl gave a small, sad smile. "I used to be. A long time ago." He paused. He looked around the gym, at the punching bags, at the training equipment, at the poster of Briggs, triumphant, on the wall. I buried that life, son. I thought I buried it for good. He wrung the mop again. The water dripped into the bucket. Each drop was like a ticking clock, a slow, steady rhythm. He went back to cleaning. He moved, with practiced ease. The water disappeared from the floor. The stain vanished, just like the memory of the punch, or so he hoped. But the silence in the gym remained. The students watched him. They watched the quiet janitor. They knew. Nothing would ever be the same in this gym. Earl was no longer just the janitor. He was something more, something powerful, something mysterious. And they had just seen a glimpse of his hidden past. A past he clearly wanted to keep buried. But now, it was out. It was in the open. And they were all witnesses. Earl continued his work. He cleaned with a steady rhythm. The mop swished across the floor. It was a familiar, comforting sound. The gym slowly began to stir. Someone called for an ambulance. Someone else poured a cup of water over Briggs's face. Briggs groaned. He slowly began to come around. He blinked. He looked around. His eyes, usually so sharp, were glazed. He looked confused. His jaw ached. He touched his face. What happened? Briggs mumbled. His voice was thick. He tried to sit up. He winced. A sharp pain shot through his head. He looked at the students. They avoided his gaze. They looked at Earl. Earl was still cleaning, calmly, as if this was just a normal Tuesday afternoon. Travis, the tall student, stepped forward carefully. He was still in shock, but he felt a strange sense of loyalty to Earl now. Or maybe it was just awe. Mr. Briggs, you picked a fight with Mr. Earl. His voice was low. He spoke carefully. And he knocked you out. With one punch. Briggs's eyes slowly focused on Earl. The memories started to come back. The challenge. The sneering. The arrogance. Then, the impossible blur of Earl's hand. The sudden, blinding darkness. His face hardened. Not with anger yet, but with disbelief. With wounded pride. He, Rattler Briggs, knocked out by the janitor? It was impossible. It was a nightmare. You're lying, Briggs snarled. He tried to stand up. He wobbled. His legs felt like jelly. He clutched the ropes for support. That old man? He couldn't hit a fly. He looked at Earl again, but this time he saw something different. He saw the quiet power in Earl's stance. He saw the steady, knowing gaze. He saw the truth. A cold, hard truth that struck him harder than the punch itself. Earl stopped cleaning. He leaned against the mop handle. He looked at Briggs. His voice was gentle, but it carried a steel edge. Mr. Briggs, sometimes the quietest water runs the deepest, and sometimes the oldest hands have the most to teach. Briggs stared at him. His chest heaved. The humiliation was a raw, burning pain. Not physical pain, but the pain of his broken pride. He wanted to lash out. He wanted to fight. But the memory of the punch, the sheer power behind it, held him back. He felt a deep, unfamiliar fear. He had underestimated Earl, terribly, dangerously. Who are you? Briggs growled. His voice was hoarse. Earl's gaze softened. He looked past Briggs. He looked out the window, at the setting Sunday. At the world outside the gym. Just Earl, Mr. Briggs. Just a man who wanted to be left alone. He straightened up. He moved towards the exit. His shift was over. He had cleaned the gym, and he had, against his will, taught a lesson. A hard lesson. The students parted for him. They watched him go. Their eyes were filled with respect. And a lingering curiosity. Who was this quiet janitor? What other secrets did he hold? Earl walked out of the gym. The heavy door closed behind him. The sound echoed through the stunned silence. He left Briggs reeling, humiliated, defeated, and he left his students with a story they would tell for the rest of their lives. A story of the unassuming old man, the janitor who knocked out the champion. In one hit. The gym would never be the same, and neither would Briggs. Earl had walked into that gym a simple janitor. He walked out a legend, a reluctant legend, but a legend nonetheless. He carried his secret past with him, but now a tiny crack had formed, a glimpse into a power he had tried so hard to forget, and a future he never wanted. Travis stood there. He was speechless. The simple janitor had a past of bare-knuckle fights, of fighting for survival, for family, for a beloved wife, now lost. The story resonated deep within him. He saw Earl in a new light, not just as a strong man, but as a man of profound sorrow, a man who carried a heavy weight. "I'm sorry about your wife, Mr. Earl," Travis said. His voice was genuinely sad. Earl nodded slowly. "Time heals some wounds, son, but not all." He pushed his mop bucket towards the storage closet. He put away his cleaning supplies. Each movement was deliberate, measured. Later that day, Briggs showed up. He walked into the gym. His head was held high, but his eyes were different. They lacked the usual arrogant gleam. They held a new, quiet anger, and a touch of fear. He looked for Earl. Earl was in a corner, wiping down some machines. Briggs walked straight to him. The gym went silent. Everyone watched. They waited. What would Briggs do? Would he try to take revenge? Would he challenge Earl again? Briggs stopped in front of Earl. He stared at him. "So, just Earl," Briggs sneered. His voice was low. He tried to sound tough, but there was a wobble in it. "You think you can just walk in here after what you did? You think you can make a fool out of me and get away with it?" Earl stopped wiping. He looked at Briggs. His expression was calm, untroubled. "I did not make a fool of you, Mr. Briggs. You did that yourself. I simply reacted." His voice was steady, full of the same quiet dignity. Briggs scoffed. "Reacted? You knocked me out, in front of everyone. My reputation is ruined." He gestured wildly at the few students present. They quickly looked away. "Perhaps," Earl said softly, "your reputation was built on sand, Mr. Briggs." And a little water revealed that. He picked up his rag. He went back to wiping the machine. He dismissed Briggs. He treated him like a minor annoyance, not a threat. This infuriated Briggs. His face flushed with rage. "You think you're better than me, old man? You think you can just come here, hide your past, and then make a spectacle of me?" He took a step closer. His fists clenched. He was trying to intimidate Earl, but Earl didn't flinch. "My past is my own, Mr. Briggs," Earl said, without looking up. "And I have tried very hard to keep it there. You were the one who dragged it out." "I heard stories," Briggs growled. "Stories about you, about bare-knuckle fights, about a legend from some forgotten place." He spat the word legend. He clearly didn't believe it. Or didn't want to. "Is that what you are? Some kind of retired street brawler? You think you can come here and try to be a hero?" Earl finally put down his rag. He stood up straight. He turned to face Briggs fully. His eyes held a deep, unyielding seriousness. "I am no hero, Mr. Briggs, and I never wanted to be. I am a man who lost everything, and then tried to build a peaceful life, a life far away from violence, from anger, from pride." He paused. "But some men, like yourself, make that peace impossible." Briggs saw the look in Earl's eyes. It was not anger, not fury. It was something far more chilling. It was resolve. It was a complete lack of fear. It was the look of a man who had faced true darkness and survived, a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect, even if it was just his peace. A cold dread began to settle in Briggs's stomach. He wanted to fight. He wanted to reclaim his pride, but something held him back. The memory of that one punch, the sheer, unexpected force. The way Earl moved, it was not luck, it was skill. Deep, ingrained skill. "This isn't over, old man," Briggs hissed. His voice was low. A desperate attempt to regain some control, some power. He turned. He walked away. He left the gym. His shoulders were slumped. His usual swagger was gone. Earl watched him go. A profound sadness settled over him. He had wanted peace, but it seemed peace was a luxury he could not afford. Not yet. He picked up his rag again. He went back to cleaning. But the quiet life he had built was now irrevocably changed. The past he had tried to bury was now a living, breathing shadow. And Briggs, though defeated, was not done. Earl felt it. A cold certainty. This was indeed far from over. His peace, his quiet life, was now under a new kind of threat. And this time, he might have to fight for more than just dignity. He might have to fight for his very way of life. The weeks leading up to the King of the Ring challenge passed in a blur. Briggs used every media trick he knew. He appeared on local sports shows. He boasted to reporters. He painted Earl as a trickster, a lucky shot, an old man who got in over his head. He promised a brutal, swift victory. His message was clear. He would reclaim his honor. Earl, on the other hand, was quiet. He still worked his janitorial shifts. He moved through the gym, cleaning, observing, but his mind was elsewhere. He wasn't training in the traditional sense. He wasn't lifting weights or sparring. Instead, he meditated. He practiced subtle movements. He focused his mind. He worked on his breath. He was preparing not just his body, but his spirit. He knew the true battle was within himself. Could he step into the fire without burning? Could he fight without the anger that had once consumed him? Travis, fascinated, watched Earl. He saw the janitor's subtle preparations, the quiet strength, the deep calm. It was a different kind of training, a deeper wisdom. Travis tried to learn. He asked Earl questions. Earl answered with parables, with quiet lessons about focus, about purpose, about knowing oneself. Earl was teaching him, not how to fight, but how to be. The day of the fight drew near. The city buzzed with anticipation. Briggs's supporters were loud, but a growing number of people, touched by Earl's quiet dignity, hoped for an underdog miracle. Earl felt the weight of it all. He thought of Betty. He thought of the peace he had built. This fight was for that peace. It was a defense, not an attack. And he would be ready to face not just Briggs, but the ghosts of his own past, once and for all. The stage was set. The world was watching. And Earl, the janitor, was about to step into the ring for the final time. The arena lights glared down. The air thrummed with the roar of thousands. It was a spectacle. Briggs, a furious storm of muscle and rage, lunged at Earl. He threw a dizzying flurry of punches, each one aimed at reclaiming his lost pride. His face was contorted with anger. He fought with raw, unbridled aggression. Earl, however, was a calm sea. He moved with a quiet, almost poetic grace. He weaved, he dodged, he deflected. Not with speed, but with economy of motion. Every movement was precise, deliberate. He didn't waste energy. He didn't fight with anger. He fought with clarity, with purpose. He saw Briggs's blind fury. He saw the openings it created. Briggs, exhausted, stumbled. His attacks grew wilder, sloppier. He was a professional, but his emotions clouded his judgment. Earl waited. He watched. He moved. And then, he saw it. The perfect window. He stepped in, not with a devastating knockout blow like before, but with a series of quick, targeted strikes. A crisp jab to the body, a swift uppercut that rocked Briggs's head. Briggs faltered. His guard dropped. Earl delivered a final, measured blow. It was not a punch meant to render unconscious. It was a precise, powerful strike that sent Briggs sprawling to the canvas. Briggs landed hard. He wasn't out cold this time. He lay there, winded, defeated. His rage, finally, extinguished by Earl's quiet mastery. A profound silence fell over the arena. It lasted only a second. Then, the crowd erupted. Not just in cheers, but in a wave of profound respect. They had seen true skill, true wisdom. Earl stood over Briggs. His face, etched with weariness, held a quiet peace. He extended a hand. Briggs looked up. His eyes, for the first time, showed not just shame, but a dawning understanding. Slowly, grudgingly, he took Earl's hand. He pulled himself up. He nodded. A silent, solemn acknowledgement of defeat. Earl looked out at the roaring crowd. He had fought, not for glory, not for revenge, but for his peace, for his quiet life. He had honored Betty's memory. He had defended his dignity. He never fought in the ring again. He returned to his mop and bucket. But the gym was different. Briggs, humbled, began to change. He became a better trainer, more respectful. He taught his students about discipline, about true strength. And Travis? He learned more from Earl than any fighting lesson. He learned about inner strength, about quiet resilience, about the power of defending your peace. Earl found his peace, a peace earned not by avoiding conflict, but by facing it with wisdom and control. His story reminds us that true strength isn't always loud or flashy. It's often found in the quiet ones, in those who carry deep wisdom and fight not for glory, but for dignity, for peace, for love. Have you ever underestimated someone? Have you ever found a hidden strength within yourself when pushed to your limits? Share your story in the comments below. Like this video if Earl's quiet determination moved you. Subscribe for more incredible tales of perseverance. And remember, sometimes, the greatest legends are found in the most unassuming places. They walk among us every day, waiting for the moment to reveal their hidden depths. Let Earl's story be a reminder that beneath the surface, everyone carries a universe of untold power. Find yours.